Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Financial Wellness Fridays, brought to you by COPEC. I'm going to be your speaker today. My name is Jerry Snyder. I'm a CFP and part of a registered investment advisory group here in Dublin. But our purpose today is strictly educational. We're going to talk about Social Security basics, and I hope you'll find that helpful today. If you've been with us before, you'll know we want to make a quick introduction about COPEC and do some disclosures, and that's what is on your screen now. We are, of course, a number of our speakers are part of the financial industry. We also, some of us serve on the board of COPEC, so we wanted to make those disclosures. So we provide those opportunities. And you can sign up again on the website, copeceducation.org. So at this point, we'll start our program, and I'm going to bring up our program at this point, which is Social Security basics. I wanted to start off with a few definitions. One important definition is PIA. That stands for Primary Insured Person Under Social Security. So that's an important concept, particularly if there's a spouse involved that might also have Social Security benefits. Another very important topic is FRA, and that stands for full retirement age. That is the age in which you would receive your maximum benefit under normal retirement age. And then FICA, if you're still employed, and I think most of you are at this point, your employer, if you're under a Social Security employment, you're contributing to Social Security each and every paycheck, and then your employer is matching that as well. Currently, the deduction that you're experiencing is 6.2% of your earnings goes into the Social Security system, and that is matched by your employer for your future benefit. Now, in addition, you might see either separately or included in that tax deduction is a Medicare deduction as well. And so that currently is 1.45. So added up, you're contributing 7.65 to your Social Security and your Medicare. Now keep in mind, of course, we're talking about two different agencies there. And sometimes they get confused. Social Security is for three benefits, basically. Your retirement benefit, a disability benefit falls under Social Security. And then, of course, they do pay a small, and I'll emphasize the word small, death benefit. Now, Social Security started out in 1935, and Medicare came along later, and I believe it was 1964. When you go, and you might sign up for these at different times, but part of the confusion, too, is although they're separate agencies, if you first sign up for Medicare, and you want to sign up in person, although it's very, very easy to sign up online, particularly for Medicare, but some people choose, they want to sign up in person and get some questions answered. Well, you actually go to your Social Security office to sign up for Medicare. But keep in mind, they're two different agencies. So we'll kind of move ahead here. And I think most of you may know by now, but I'd like to reinforce that you can sign up and start Social Security at age 62. If you do so, of course, you're signing up before your full retirement age. Now, everybody has their own retirement age, full retirement age based on when they were born. And I'll show you a chart that reinforces that. And so at age, for many on the program here today, might be in the area of 66 to 67 when they reach full retirement. So you can start at 62. If you do, you're going to have a discount in your payments versus waiting to your full retirement age. And then, by the way, you can actually defer your payments beyond 66 or beyond your full retirement all the way up to age 70. There's no benefit to defer it beyond age 70, so you at least want to start it by age 70. And we'll get into some factors as to how early you want to start it, and there's a lot of factors in leading to that decision. Again, not to confuse, but Medicare, you become Medicare eligible at 65. Now, if you're still working, you still might not need to join Medicare because you're still getting health care from your employer. But we all are considered Medicare eligible at age 65. It used to be that way for Social Security. But to keep the Social Security system healthy, financially healthy, they've implemented for the younger people or more recent retirees need to wait longer to get that full retirement. So be very aware of that. And that's, again, going to determine your future benefit as to when, of course, when you start it. And, you know, the decision, many factors go into the decision as to when to start it. You know, life expectancy, of course, and if we knew that, it'd make our decision much simpler. But your health might be a factor too. You know, you hear of break-even points. You know, if I live at least to age 78 or 80, then it's going to behoove me maybe to wait longer to start Social Security, because then I'll get a payout longer throughout my longevity or my longer lifestyle. But we don't know how long we're going to live, and that's what makes that decision a little bit tougher. But there's other factors as well. Am I going to continue to work would be a factor. What about my spouse? What's their situation? Are they eligible for Social Security? When are they going to start? And so, you know, there's a lot of calculators. In fact, Social Security has a calculator. A lot of those are designed to look at the decision kind of myopically in terms of how long am I going to live, you put in there and you don't know. And then, you know, when is the best time, or when can I receive the most from Social Security? But it's important to consider, again, many other factors that those calculators might not take into consideration. Are you going to spend those payments right away? Are you going to invest them once you get them paid out by Social Security? What is my other income? Do I need it right away to live on? Of course. What are the income taxes implication of Social Security, and when to take that? And again, how might my spouse be affected? So here's that chart I was mentioning, which tells us again, when is your full retirement age? You know, when can you get the most benefit? And of course, born between 43 and 54, that would be age 66. If you were born later than that, you may have to wait a little bit longer, as the chart indicates, before your full retirement age. Now, again, this is important for a number of reasons. And so let's talk a little bit about qualification and how they determine the benefit. The first thing I want to mention is, and the first thing should be asked is, am I even eligible for Social Security? Now, eligibility requires 40 quarters of earnings under a Social Security employment. So what we're talking about there is, now, if you are a member of a pension plan, let's say with the state of Ohio, you're not contributing into Social Security, but maybe you had prior employment, or maybe you're doing part-time work, or maybe you're going to do part-time work after you leave a pension plan that doesn't contribute to Social Security. For others of you, on an ongoing basis, maybe you work in the private sector, you've been under Social Security pretty much all your working life. So there's going to be absolutely no problem in you being eligible, because to be eligible again, you need 40 quarters. They currently define a quarter as an amount of money you earn under a Social Security employment. And I'm going to look here briefly to remind myself, for every $1,400, $1,460 you earn under a Social Security employment, you earn 1 credit. You can only earn 4 credits in any 1 year. So 4 times 1,460 is about $5,800. So whenever you reach $5,800 of earnings under a Social Security employer, you've earned the 4 credits. You can only earn 4 credits in any 1 year. So it's basically equivalent with the 40 credits. It's basically equivalent to 10 years for most people. Now, again, many on the program here have far in excess of the 40 credits or 40 equivalent years. But maybe for others, again, they want to make sure that they go for the 40 quarters if they want to have any benefit whatsoever. Now, after you know if you're eligible, then it's a matter of how much am I going to get paid? And what Social Security does is they look at your highest 35 years of earnings. And that's how they calculate it. If you don't have that many years, they're going to calculate whatever number of years you have. And by the way, let me mention at this point, if you haven't done it, we strongly recommend that you go online and register with Social Security directly. And in so doing, you'll set up passwords and you'll have, your challenge questions for security questions. But it's really advisable because then you can go into that Social Security website anytime you want, check on your record, and you can access these calculators. And one thing we want you to do is to look back on your prior earnings and make sure that it's been calculated properly. That does fall into your responsibilities. Frankly, we rarely run into any errors there that have been made, but errors have been made by the Social Security Administration. Usually far and few between, but do look into that. And, I think for a while, and maybe still for a lot of the younger people, they're not sending out the statements manually or hard copy anymore until you maybe reach a later stage. So another good reason to do that, socialsecurity.gov, go online, register, and make sure that you have access to that account. Now, while you're doing that, you can learn that Social Security, in terms of what your benefit is going to be, are going to look at your past record, 35 years or whatever number of years you have in the system. And they're going to look year by year at what we call substantial earnings. Within that year that you earned, was it considered substantial enough to earn you a benefit as far as your actual benefit calculation? And you can actually access a form online which will show what substantial earnings were in each of the past years. Example, myself, my first employment was way back in the late 60s. I got what I consider to be a pretty good salary right out of college. So I was earning $8,400 a year for my first assignment. Well, if you look back on this chart, $8,400 at that time was considered substantial. Today, it would not. So I think today it's more in the, 25,000, maybe 28,000 range. You'll see that on the chart. But you're only going to get credits once you're eligible. Then for the benefit, you're only get credit for the number of substantial years you've had in Social Security. So that becomes very important. Now, as I mentioned, we do these individual counseling, either by telephone or Zoom individual sessions. Again, we're doing much more in-person consultations. COPEC would sponsor those. So one way or the other, we've helped a lot of people kind of get established with Social Security and help them calculate what they might expect. So do take advantage of that if we can be of help. And again, like today's programs, no cost, no obligation, strictly educational to help you get set up properly. So I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about the best time to start, or what is the impact of starting the benefit at certain times. So again, as we said so many times, you can start the benefit at age 62. If you wait till your full retirement, whether that's age 66 or somewhere in between 66 and 67, that's going to depend on how much lower benefit you're going to have from waiting till your full retirement. And that calculates out to be about a 25 to 30% reduction in your benefit versus you waiting till full retirement. And again, that depends on your retirement age and your full retirement age. So of course, you're going to get a benefit paid out for a longer period of time if you start early, presumably. But that's a big part of the decision is to, and again, that's why we talk about these break evens, that, you know, the longer you live, of course, the more benefit is maybe to delay. We don't know how long we're going to live, so it makes it a little bit difficult to determine. Now, on the other hand, let's say you're going to wait till full retirement. You're going to wait till that full retirement benefit. And so let's say the circumstances say, well, gosh, if I wait one more year, well, if you do wait one more year, you're going to have an 8% higher benefit. So let's say your full retirement is age 66, and for some reason it's advantageous, or you know you're going to live a long life, or for other reasons it's advantageous to defer. Each year 8% higher to age 70, so it's going to be 32% higher, presumably, for somebody 66. And that's a pretty large difference in your payout. Now, we want you to live a long time if you're going to defer it that long. But as we'll talk about starting now and a little bit later reinforce, this could impact a spouse significantly as well. Now, if we look at deferring from age 62 way out to 70, it's a 76% higher benefit. So that could be the long range impact. And based on calculations, that could be as much as $130,000 total payout, again, presuming you live long enough for that kind of a deferral. So this is a chart reminding us about longevity and whether we're female or male and how long we might live. So again, they're saying that a male age 65 can live easily as long as 83. All you have to do is open the newspaper and look at the obituaries, and it's just amazing how many people are living into their 90s and even the century mark. It seems like every day we'll see people that have reached that century mark, the age 100. And of course, females, although maybe the gap's narrowing a little bit, females again are tending to live 2, 3, 4 years longer on average. So this can be important as it applies back to your decision, particularly if both of you are eligible maybe for a Social Security benefit. Another important factor is, am I going to continue to work and receive Social Security at the same time? So that can be an important decision, and that can affect the payout of your Social Security benefit. And this is a chart that'll tell us the impact of that. Now, I want to reinforce this a couple times because of its important. And it's why I define FRA, full retirement, at the very beginning of the program. If you decide to continue to work and also start your Social Security benefit, and you are under your full retirement age, then your Social Security benefits can be reduced. And so this is a chart that tells us that. And the figures change a little bit every year. This year, in 2020, the figure is 18,240. And what that simply means is you're receiving a Social Security benefit, you're also continuing to work and having an earned income. For every $2 over the 18,240, they're going to take $1 away in Social Security. So again, if your earnings are a lot higher than that, you know, you're going to have quite an adjustment in that Social Security payout. Now, the middle box is more liberal because, you know, many of us might work 6 months into a year. They're not going to start Social Security till later in the year. So let's say they retire in June, and they're not going to start their Social Security until June, but starting it in June, then the figure is 48,600 in that first partial year of receiving Social Security, because they acknowledge, you've worked part of the year full time with full compensation. So they're only going to take $1 away for every $3 over that 48,600. However, then the following year, if you continue to work, then it applies to that 18,000 figure. Now, it is true that if this were to happen and you had some kind of a reduction in Social Security, let's say you made 25,000, so an additional, let's say 7,000 was going to be applied to that reduction, the $1 for $2 reduction. It is true that later on it may catch up and you may get a little bit higher benefit later because you've earned into that, and quite possibly you're still contributing in to Social Security because of your continued employment at the same time you're drawing out. So there is a bit of a catch up, but still it could affect you in the short run to be able to continue to work. Now, once you reach full retirement age, whatever your full retirement age, you can earn as much as you want and not have this kind of a reduction based on earnings. So again, that's the critical factor about reaching full retirement age. Another aspect of Social Security, I hate to be the purveyor of this information, you may well know it already, but is Social Security taxed? And the answer to that is, for most people, it will be. But that too is based on your income. And on this aspect of taxation, we're talking about income taxation. All of your income is going to be considered for purposes of determining whether Social Security part is going to be taxed. And so it is going to depend on whether you have a married spouse, and then also whether you're filing singly or jointly. And so the chart tells us here that if you are single or filing single, and they're going to look at, again, how much are you receiving for Social Security? How much are you receiving from earnings if you're still working? But also, how much are you receiving from other pensions? How much are you receiving from your investments that are being taxed to you? And all that needs to be considered. So they're looking at what we call your modified adjusted gross income, and then applying a tax on your Social Security based on how much that is. So if you're between 25,000 and 35,000 of this total adjusted gross income, and you're filing singly, well, 50% of your benefit, that is the part received from Social Security, will be taxed. So again, if you're receiving $20,000 from Social Security, well, they're going to bring back 10,000 into the tax calculation for total income, and that's how much is going to be considered for taxation of your Social Security. Now, if you are above 34,000 filing singly, or you are single, or you are above 44,000 if you're filing jointly, then as much as 85% of your portion of Social Security being paid will be included into your tax calculation. Now then at that point, it's going to be whatever your tax bracket is as to the actual tax. But this is a matter of what percent of your Social Security payout is going to be considered. So again, it's very, very important when making that Social Security decision is to consider these many other factors. Are you going to continue to work? What does your other incomes look like? Pension, savings, and investment. And let me give a couple quick examples of clients that we've dealt with and how it can be dramatically different. In one instance, and I might mention, I think this is another reason, a very important reason for kind of looking at everything together. I know we have additional programs I would invite you to tune into on the planning process in general. A lot of times we refer to it as financial independence. Some of our other COPEC speakers get into that very deeply. So it always makes us a little nervous when somebody is just dealing with the Social Security calculator and just putting just limited information in it, and it's telling them when they should start Social Security without including these many other factors. What's my spouse's situation? What's their earnings? What is our other sources of income? So with some clients, we've said, actually, usually they're retired and they're not earning an income, but in some cases, hey, defer taking your pension or defer drawing down on your 401k. You know, maybe by deferring their pension from their employer, they can earn into a higher benefit by deferring. Even though they've retired, maybe because of their age or something, they'll age into a higher benefit. So that might be a reason for some people. Yes, let's start it. Now, of course, if people need it to take care of their basic living expenses, yeah, they might lean to starting it as soon as they can. But for others who might have other sources, or maybe they're going to continue to work that extra year because it's going to help them in their financial independence. And by the way, sometimes just working, you may not want to hear it, just working that one more year or one extra year can make a substantial difference. You're still contributing to a 401k or a pension. You're maybe not spending as much on travel and other needs. So by gosh, even a year can make a big difference. But even for some that are retiring right away, it might behoove them to, yes, start Social Security right away and defer their other investments or age into a better pension benefit. So in another case, maybe a different client, it's the exact opposite. Hey, they're retiring early. They can't access their pension to, let's say, age 59 and a half or at a later time. Well, maybe it's better, go ahead and start one of their pension plans that they can access and defer Social Security, because we've seen the advantages of waiting to Social Security, maybe till full retirement age, if they're close, or even beyond that. And then the impact of the spouse is very important as well. Let me mention this. If we do have spousal situations where both spouses are eligible for a Social Security benefit. And that's why, again, I define PIA to begin with. The primary insurance is the individual that maybe was more fully engaged of the two spouses, more fully engaged in a Social Security employment. So they have a higher potential Social Security benefit than the other spouse. Well, the lower earning spouse, if you will, or the lower Social Security benefit spouse, has an option in most cases that they can either elect off their higher spouse's benefit or their own, whichever is higher. So there are some exceptions to that, but for many people that have both been engaged in a Social Security earning employer have that choice. And it's important on the timing too, as to when that spouse would be eligible for a spousal benefit. In most circumstances, the higher earning spouse would have to trigger their benefit, or they're deemed to trigger their benefit if the spouse wants to start their benefit. So one misconception a lot of times is that, and let me mention this too, and it's pretty rare almost anymore, but when Social Security started, one of the spouses generally was a non-working spouse altogether. They stayed home, raised the kids, and I think we know what gender that typically was in those days. But Social Security wanted to take care of that non-working spouse. So they allowed that non-working spouse to access the working spouse's Social Security benefit. So even that spouse that didn't work whatsoever was entitled to 50% of their higher earner spouse's Social Security benefit. So if that spouse was eligible for $2,000 a month, the non-working spouse could get as much as $1,000 or 50%. Now, if that spouse, the higher earning spouse, started the benefit though prior to their full retirement age, remember they got that discount. So the higher earner spouse got that discount. And therefore, depending on the age of the non-working spouse, they would have a discount based on the higher earner's decision and their age, but then also the age of the non-working spouse is considered too in what that benefit would be. So yes, it's a little confusing, but that's kind of how it works. So when we say 50% of the higher earner spouse's benefit, that's dependent on that spouse's decision as when to start and what percent they have, and then the age of the non-working spouse. But again, more typically, we have the lower earning spouse also engaged in their own Social Security benefit. So we look at both, and they can choose the higher of the two. Again, a lot of need for analysis and calculation, considering many, many different factors. And when we talk again about a Social Security benefit, we're talking about a defined benefit that's going to be paid out once it's started for lifetime. And generally, you can't stop that. There is a short period of time that you can stop it, but generally, once you start it, you can't stop it. So it's kind of an irrevocable decision. So make sure you have all the tools and education possible when you make that decision. Another good reminder, though, that if you're so fortunate as to have two Social Security benefits in whatever amount, and both spouses are living and enjoying that benefit, once either one of the spouses deceases, you do not keep both of those Social Security benefits. Typically, you're able to keep the higher of the two, but you lose one of those benefits. And that can happen with your pensions, by the way. If you have a pension that is shared with a surviving spouse or significant other, be aware of, what kind of reduction. Maybe the spouse is shared 100%, so there wouldn't be a reduction in the pension benefit. But be reminded, many people picked like a 50% survivor option or a different percent, so there may be a reduction. So you could lose a part of the pension benefit with the death of one spouse, and you might lose one of the Social Security benefits. So we want to look ahead, anticipate that happening when we do financial independence kind of planning. So that has a big impact. And this is kind of a sidebar, but that's why we look at life insurance. Many people, when they're employed, have group life insurance, but when they retire, they're going to lose their group life insurance or a big portion of it. Maybe they have personally owned insurance, but a lot of people will leave behind, of course, the majority of their life insurance. And if they have kept other personal insurance, they're always asking, and I think it's good questions, do I need this life insurance anymore? And so the thought is, of course, that my kids are out of the nest, they're doing well, they're healthy, they've got good employments, I've put them through, we've got our education behind us, we've helped pay for their education, and we've paid their education. Do we have any kind of need for life insurance more? And oftentimes, as we age and we're getting into retirement or older ages, the typical thought would be no. And many times that might be the case. Hey, we don't need this life, or we don't need as much anymore. But before we have people drop that insurance, we're also looking ahead with these type of decisions. Once they lose a Social Security benefit, how is the survivor going to reach their financial independence? And so, life insurance can still have a play at the point of losing a Social Security benefit or at the point of a reduction of a pension benefit. So, and sometimes that even precludes somebody from having to take a reduction in their pension because they know instead of a large survivor benefit, we're going to have this life insurance come in, become invested, and that's going to create the income rather than relying on that second Social Security benefit or that larger survivor pension benefit. So it all goes into proper planning and financial independence work as far as that goes as well. So I think we've kind of beaten this a little bit in terms of the survivor benefit of Social Security. So again, kind of in review here, you may decide to take the benefit early. Obviously, if you need the benefit right away. Some people take it and then turn around and invest it. Be careful on that decision. I think it depends a lot on your comfort level with investing and what your objective return is and how much risk is involved. Some people, again, choose to, and an important decision, again, is the impact on the spouse with making these decisions as well. So these are all the different variables that can take place that, we encourage you to think out. So I'm going to, in conclusion here, and then we can check on any questions that may have come in, but we do want you to contact your Social Security office, as I mentioned earlier, socialsecurity.gov. When it comes time to actually applying, we typically want you to think ahead on that. At least a couple months. This says 3 months. You can start to think about contacting the office 3 months before you want to start your benefit. Generally, I think 2 months is often adequate, but they do permit a 3-month look ahead if you have your decisions kind of well in hand at that point. And at this point, I just want to check in. It looks like we might have had some questions earlier that I think it looks like we may have addressed those as well. So it looks like we're wrapping up a little bit early. I might just hold another minute or so to see if any other questions come in. We sure appreciate you joining us today. We hope this has helped. It may have initiated a lot more questions than it resolved, but hope there was a purpose in doing that as well. So just let me remind you that we have the daily programs on many of these topics and other financial issues. Again, every Friday we have the Financial Fridays, and then we have these special programs like Retirement Decisions, where we're looking at things kind of comprehensively. So thank you again so much for joining us. Please join us again on the dailies, and we will hope you have the rest of the good afternoon. Take care.